The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus departed from there and came to his native place, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished. They said, "Where did this man get all this? What kind of wisdom has been given him? What mighty deeds are wrought by his hands? Is he not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? Are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his native place and among his own kin and in his own house." So he was not able to perform any mighty deed there, apart from curing a few sick people by laying his hands on them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I had my family over from Arizona a couple of weeks ago, and it was my parents and my sister and my nephew, and they all stayed in the rectory for a week, and it's wonderful to have family over for a visit. And it's wonderful when they go back home again as well, because, don't get me wrong, we had a wonderful time. We took the train up to Maine one day. We went to the beach. My brother came over with all his kids for a cookout one day. It's just that, I have a job to do. I'm a busy parish priest, and they're always interrupting my schedule, and I was trying to take care of my guests, and the kids were running around making noise. Every day they were there, a celibate vocation started looking better and better, and my dad celebrated his 69th birthday the last day he was here, and we all had a great party for him. And I said, everyone's going to have to come back for your 70th birthday next year, and no need to come back before then, I almost added. I actually am very appreciative of my family and the way they've loved me and supported me in my vocation. It's just that my vocation is to be a parish priest, and it's not clear that being a parish priest in today's world is compatible with having a family around all the time. If the church was ever to allow priests in this part of the world to get married, as happens in other parts of the world, I think there's going to have to be a big change in the expectations of what a priest can do and how available they are. And the church should never lose its appreciation for the gift of celibacy for those who are called to it, because it's a wonderful gift for the church and for God's people and for God to be available, just as a married life and family is a wonderful gift of God. I wonder if Jesus ever got ambivalent about his own family in the same way. He was appreciative of what he had received from his family in Nazareth growing up. That's what made him who he was. But when he goes back to his hometown, it seemed like it was his own family that was holding him back the most, that was preventing him from doing the work that he was supposed to be doing. Because his family only kept seeing him as the kid that grew up down the street. He's the carpenter's son. We know his relatives. We know where he comes from. What good can come from little Nazareth here? And they weren't able to get to that place of faith where they could see God working in their own hometown, right? With someone that they knew, someone that they grew up with. They weren't able to get to that place of faith where you can see God at work in all the circumstances of life. And it's so easy to ignore what's going on right in front of us. Maybe they started comparing Jesus to all the other prophets that came from all the other towns. And when we start playing a comparison game like that, that's very dangerous. I think it was Theodore Roosevelt that once said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." When we start making comparisons to other people, other places, other lives, other paths, that's when we start getting in trouble. And we do it all the time. It is easy for a priest when he's in a moment of loneliness to say, "Look at all these happy, married people out there. I wish I could be like that." And then there's lots of married people out there saying, that celibate vocation looks really good right now. We do it with everything. When we were all going to the office every day, people started saying, it'd be so nice if we could stay at home and stay in our pajamas and have remote work. And after doing that for a couple of years, people are starting to say, it'd be really nice to go back to the office a little bit more and get away from home and family. Because wherever we are, there's challenges. A young man like Jesus growing up in Nazareth probably dreams of going to the big city one day and fulfilling the mission that God has created him for. And then you go to the big city and they want to crucify you and you think there's no place like home. Comparison is a dangerous game. It's better to try to find that place of contentment, that place of gratitude where we can be grateful for what God is doing in the midst of our life right now, amid all the joys and challenges. That's what St. Paul got to. St. Paul today talks about the thorn in the flesh. And he doesn't say what that was, but he had some sort of suffering in his life that was significant. And it lasted for a long time. He begged God many times to take away this suffering. And he never says what it is. Some people speculate from other clues in his writings. Maybe he had a problem with his eyesight. Maybe it was something else. But God never took it away. And he got discouraged about it sometimes. He got depressed about it sometimes. But then he got to the point of contentment where he realized, you know what? As much as I don't like this in my life, this is where God works. In fact, when I am at my weakest, that's when I am the most strong, because I stop relying on my own strength in those moments, and I start relying on the strength of God. And so I am content, he says, with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, constraints, for when I am weak, then I am strong. Herman Melville, the great author of Moby Dick, he once wrote a short story called The Piazza, and it's about his home in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And he had this porch he built on his home that he called his piazza. And he was from the big city of New York City, but he moved to the country. And his neighbors in this little town all made fun of him because, what are you doing building this porch on the north side of your house? The north side gets no sun. You're going to be freezing cold in March. And yes, he said, but in July, I'm going to be like poor Lazarus, cool, while you're all burning up. And but I built this porch on the north side of the house so it could face Mount Greylock, the tallest mountain in Massachusetts. Well, Herman Melville never had honor in his hometown. His neighbors always criticized him. Nobody appreciated his writings during his lifetime. He's famous now, but during his lifetime, he was panned. His novels didn't sell. He saw himself as a failed writer. He had money problems. He had family problems. He got discouraged. He got depressed for many years. And he would always compare himself with another author who lived in Pittsfield, and that was Nathaniel Hawthorne, the author of The Scarlet Letter. And Nathaniel Hawthorne had all the praise, all the accolades. Everyone looked up to him and respected him as a great author. Well, in his short story, he talks about being on his porch and looking up on Mount Greylock, and he's in the midst of all this discouragement, all this depression, all this comparison, and he looks up and he sees this house built on top of Mount Greylock, and he begins to dream about the people who live up in that house. And he says, look at those people. They live up in the clouds. They live up in the fresh air. They must have none of the problems that we have down here below in the valley. And look at the water on the roof of this house. It's gleaming. It looks like the roof is made of gold. Oh, I must go up there and see the blessed people who live in this house. Maybe there's a fairy queen who lives in this house. And he goes up there and he meets the owner of the house. And it's not a fairy queen. It's an old woman who's sitting on her porch doing her sewing. Who are you? She says. Well, I'm from the valley. I live in that house down below. Oh, she said, I've often sat on this porch doing my sewing, and I've always wondered who lived in that house down in the valley, because I've always felt they must be so blessed. They have none of the problems that we have up here on the mountain. Up here, it's cold and it's lonely, and nobody lives up here. And look at all the water on my house. It's rotting away my house. And I look at those people down there, and I say, how blessed they must be. It's so easy to look out the window, look in the porch, look to someone else. But when we're tempted to do that, keep your eyes fixed on the Lord. Keep your eyes fixed on what he's doing in your own life. God works through anything. He works through all the joys, all the challenges. We're all on our own path. Herman Melville was on a very unique path. He ended up dying thinking he was a failed writer. Only many years later was he recognized as being maybe the greatest American author, even greater than Hawthorne. But he never knew it in his lifetime. And maybe it was all that angst, all that depression that caused him to be such a great writer. We're all on our own path. We all have our own journey. But if we can get to that place of faith where we see that every circumstance of our life is an opportunity for God to work. We all have thorns in the flesh. We all have challenges. We all have difficulties in our vocation. But if we can keep our eyes fixed on the Lord and what he's doing right in our hometown, right in our life, then we'll see the glory of God at work.